Okay, so at this stage now we're ready to start inking our girl. Some people, what they prefer to do is they will go ahead and ink directly right here to this paper, and then they'll come back and erase all of the pencil. But you'll notice after doing that, it still looks kind of dirty and a little bit old. So for me personally, what I prefer to do is I prefer to have a brand new clean piece of paper on top. And then I'll go ahead and ink directly to this paper here without using my pencil. Also, you'll notice that if you're working on a dark tabletop and it's kind of hard to see through your paper, just put another clean piece of paper behind your girl, so now it's a white tabletop and it'll be a lot easier to see through your paper. Now before I start inking my girl, a couple things I want to do is I'll just take a close look at the piece of paper that I'm using. And if there's any weird marks or dots or something on there that I can't get off, then I'll go ahead and just choose a different piece of paper. Because ultimately, I want this to be really good looking, clean, simple, and I want it to last for a really long time. Another thing that we're going to need is we want to know where that original plumb line was. So then when we come over to line up this paper on top of it, we'll know exactly where that plumb line is, and we can make sure we're square with our new piece of paper. So just come into your model and you can see down here somewhere by her knees and her foot, that original plumb line, which comes all the way back up here to her face. And darken it in just wherever you need to see it, so that you can see it through your new paper. And then another one that I like to have is this floor right here. And when I draw in that floor, I'm going to be super diligent that I'm making sure my ruler is totally square with that plumb line. And now I'll know when I come and line up my new piece of paper that I have the plumb line as well as the floor is square with this new piece of paper. The one thing you don't want to accidentally do is have your girl underneath here slightly crooked on this paper, because once you pull her away, she's going to be standing at a weird angle. Now for me, if I decided that I'm going to ink this standing pose and I want to ink this croquis from the static pose, I can choose to have one girl on one side of the paper and then the next girl on another side of the paper. Or if you would like, you can also just have one girl on one piece of paper and you would put her right in the middle. And for me personally, that's what I prefer to do. So to start off, what I want to do is divide this paper in half and find what is the exact middle. So I know that this is 8.5 inches wide, and the center point would be 4 1/4. And then what I'll do is I'll use my lightest 2H pencil to draw the center line in here. Keeping in mind that ultimately I don't want to have any pencil on this page, so I'm just going to put this in here extremely lightly. And that'll be the only pencil I have, and the rest of my drawing is going to be in ink. So now I can use this pencil line to come in and line up with the original plumb line from my croquis below. Now the tape itself will be a little bit aggressive when you try to peel it back off. But something you can do is you can stick this to the floor or your shirt or your pants, and it'll make it less sticky. So for me, if I just stick it to my chair and now it's not quite as sticky, I'll know it's not going to damage my other drawing over here. For this demo, I'm going to go ahead and use my light table. If you have a light table, the things that I like to use for cleaning it would be the same thing you would use for cleaning your glasses. So take a minute to clean your light table. Also, if you have to do any erasing, I would do erasing off of the light table, brush off my paper, and bring it back to here so you don't get any kind of eraser marks on here. Then if you have a piece of fabric that's got a nap to it, so for instance like fleece or corduroy, and if you wipe that also along the surface, what it'll do is it'll make your light board a little bit staticky. And the cool thing is now when you put your paper on here, it'll stick right to here because it's becoming a static surface. So now that I have my paper taped in front of the Croquis, I just want to double check that my plumb line is correct. So now looking through the page, I can clearly come in and see where my pencil plumb line from the new piece of paper is perfectly at the top as well as all the way down at the bottom. And then I'm looking at the floor here and I'm seeing that it's also parallel with my new piece of paper. So I know that she's perfectly squared up and ready to go, and I also have her in the center of the page. The first thing that I want to do with my girl is I'm going to draw in her face, because if I make a mistake here on her face and it really bothers me, I can always just put in a fresh new piece of paper, get the face right before I start doing the rest of the body. So let's do that now. For doing the face, I want to start with my smallest pen that I have, which is the 005. And I'm going to go ahead and get her eyelashes, eyebrows, eyes, nose, and mouth using this pen. So now you can see using my 005 pen, I've come in here and I've got her mouth, nose, eyes, eyelashes, and eyebrows. Now let's move up to the number 1, and we're going to get her jawline, her hair outline, as well as her ears and neck. So just a few pointers what I like to do when I'm starting to ink my girls. Off to the side here, I'll always do just a little test of what this ink feels like, how thick it is before I come over here and start drawing, and it helps get it into my brain what this tip itself is going to feel like. Also, sometimes if you stored your pen for a long time, there might be one little drop of ink there, so you might end up touching the page and have a big blob. So always check this before you start drawing. Another thing I like to do is I'll ink this in sections. So I'll do her jawline coming out to here first, and then there, and then there. So, and also since I'm right-handed, I like having my right hand travel to this side. Once I'm ready to come in and get this side of her face, I'll rotate the paper and I'll put a clean piece of paper on top of this so I won't smudge it. And then I'm able to come over here and start drawing the other side of her jaw. So again, I like to do this in sections. So I'll start here at her temple and I'll go down to the jawline in one motion. And then I'll continue from the jawline to the chin. And then I'll finish doing the chin. Then I can come back up here for the hairline. So now you can see we're starting to ink everything in, but we're keeping it very, very simple and getting rid of any old mistakes. So I have my chances here to come in and just slightly fix or tweak something as needed. Continuing with using the side 1, let's come down here and get both of her hands. So now using my size 3, as I connect into the wrist, I'm going to just start blending right through the arm and passing right by the elbow. So again, this is curving inwards. This had a slight bump right here. So here you'll notice a couple areas where I intentionally stopped my line. because we have the side of her bra right here, as well as where the princess panel and spaghetti strap and the armhole would come up to her shoulder. And I'm going to use a different size ink when I do those, and I want to have those lines be continuous back to each other. Now before I get too far along, something I want to do is I want to come in here and start to draw what was the guidelines for her A cup as well as for her underwear. And since those are very small details, we're going to come all the way back down to the 005 pen. So now I've come in with the 005 and I got the underwire on her bra as well as the binding down here on her underwear, and then a little bit of that zigzag flat lock stitch in the bow itself. Once we move back out to drawing the actual sides of her underwear and the bottom and starting to draw in the fabric for her bra, then we can move up to the size 1 pen. So again, I'm just getting the fabric layers and this outside seam from a shirt, and we'll get the outside edges of her bottoms. And down at the center of the crotch here, curve down slightly. Let's go ahead and get our guidelines. So we have a guideline here for the shoulders as well as the princess panels and the center seams, bottom of the rib cage, top of the hip bones. And we're going to do all of those using 3. And come over here and just practice getting a line with your ruler to get a sense of how close the pen is to the ruler. And then let's go ahead and practice right here, just getting her center front. And then the princess panels, if you recall, it's going to go here to the bust apex. So from the shoulder down to the bust apex, and then you pivot your ruler slightly to come down here into the waist. So it is not one continuous straight line, it's 2 different angles. And then I want to cover that because I just have that fresh ink on there, and I'll come over here to this other side. And then here at the shoulders, we can make it bump up a little bit off of her skin like we did here on the sides. So then it looks like a spaghetti strap. And then let's finally get this guideline here at the bottom of her rib cage. So now we're ready to start drawing in the waist and the legs all the way down to the shoes, and we'll continue using the number 3. Okay, so as I was drawing this leg down and back around, and I was trying to give a little corner here at her calf, it got too exaggerated, and I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the correction tape, and I'm going to cover that up, and I'll be able to redraw right back on top of it. So go ahead and draw a line here off to the side, and then use your correction tape to cover some of it up. And you'll notice the tape wants to kind of curl up a little bit, so I just press it back down, and then you can come in and do a correction right on top of that. In the very first pass you'll do on here, you'll notice that the ink doesn't quite stick as well as plain paper, so sometimes you'll have to come back and hit it a second time. So for me, if I want to fix this corner over here and make it a little more rounded off, what I'll do is I'll come and cover up just the area that I want to fix. And then I can come back and get a smooth, clean line. And you'll notice as you turn your light table back on, or if you look at this through a window, that you'll see some of the a dark area from the correction fluid. You can see it better over here. But the paper itself is totally fine, and it looks all crisp and white from the front. Now we're ready to come back up into here, and let's finish getting our guidelines for the lower part of the body. So let's continue with using the number 3 for doing our guidelines. And while you're getting your horizontal guidelines, come back and use your ruler so it's nice and crisp and clean. Now at some point we had drawn in this princess panel, so let's go ahead and finish getting that. Remembering that it's a curve, and the curve is matching similar to what the hip is doing. And it stops right here at the full hip. Now for me, I like to have the second set heading down the leg. So if you were going to do some kind of lingerie or a crisp pleat on a pair of pants, you're going to want to know where that location is. When you do this line for the center of the leg, we're not going to go the full distance, because depending on what you're drawing, that center will move one way or the other. But we just want where it starts from the beginning. So come up here to the top and start drawing it. And after a while, just lift your pen off the paper and then stop somewhere before you get to the knee area. And for the most part, that's just letting us know the location and the direction that pleats and creases would be heading towards. And again, as you draw close, you'll finish what's going on when it gets down to the bottom here. I want you to have a chance to try out your number 8 micron pen. So what we'll do is we'll use it here on the shoe. So again, off to the side, just draw a few squiggle lines and some dots to get a sense of about how much ink is coming off the tip of that and how wide it is. And then when I want to come in and do the tips of the toes, I'll switch back to my number 1. And I'll come in here and just get that little corner for the toe tip. Coming back up here into the waist area, I'm realizing I did not get my center front for the lower part of her bodice. So again, that was your number 3 pen. And then I'm also going to go ahead and draw in her belly button right here at the top of her hip bone. And again, when I draw in that belly button, I'm just doing a small shape, something like that. You don't want to do a full complete oval. At this point, everything is almost complete. A few things I want to do is I want to get the guideline down here at 9 1/4. So this is the lower ankle. And then I'll also put in a little guideline here for if you were doing leggings. And one last thing is we want to have some of the plumb line down here at the bottom and some of the floor at the bottom. And then I'm going to get the plumb line up here at her forehead. And we'll do all of this using the number 3 micron pen. So I'll start here with getting the plumb line. And then we can come in and we can get what the floor is doing. Remembering that the floor lines up with her left leg, but not her right leg. And then when we get the bottom of the ankles, so this is 9 1/4 down, these are uneven, so you have to draw them one at a time. So her left leg is going to be a little bit higher than the right leg. And then we can get this short curve here. This is 9 heads down. This was top of the ankle. And then we also want to have the guideline here for the knees. Later on when you're drawing like a knee length skirt, you want to know where that knee is. And for this kneecap here, since we have it off center towards her right side, I'm just going to put a little bit of a U shape, just so we have a sense of the kneecap is here off center. And this one we can just assume it's dead center. Everything else looks pretty good. So let's come up to the forehead here and let's get the plumb line. And I'm making sure that it's lining up all the way back down to the bottom here. So that's the plumb line at the top. This is her center front, which no longer follows the plumb line. And then down here the plumb line reappears. As I come through, and I'm just double checking every last possible guideline, and I'm noticing I forgot to do the shoulders, so let's go ahead and get that one. Later on, when you start drawing your models, this will be where her collarbone is. Alright, so taking a final look here at my inked croquis. Down here at the knee on her standing leg, the leg with her weight on it, I had curved the skin in towards the kneecap, but I didn't really like it, so I went ahead and I whited that out, and I just made her skin connect all the way through, and then I drew in a little kneecap here. Also, I'm noticing down here on her shoes, they look a little bit too puffy out to the outsides. So I'm going to go ahead and white those out and then just get them a little bit tighter onto her foot. So what I'll do is, I want to do them with the size 8. But I'll go ahead and start with the size 1 marker and get what I want first, and then I'll come back and make it thicker. So once I see that, yeah, that's pretty much what I want, let's go ahead and use the size 8 ink. And that looks good enough. So you'll notice as you come back over it, it starts to get a little bit messy. So realistically, you can only do this once or twice to do some fixes, and then after that, if it's really bad, at some point you just have to ignore it and just move on. Also, when I take a look here at my guidelines, I'm noticing that on this one, it's a little bit shorter on this side and longer on this side. So I need to center this by moving it back over this way a little bit. And I almost did the same thing here too. It's shorter on this side, longer on this side. So I'm going to move this over a titch. And then this one here should have also came over a little bit more. What I'll do is I'll come in here with my 2H pencil and I'll just really lightly get the correct beginning of the line. And again, this is heading for the center of her kneecap. So now I want to just look at it, make sure that looks correct and it looks even. And then again, we'll use the number 3 micron pen. And you're going to start dark and end light. So you just lift up as you're drawing the line. And let's go ahead and I'll fix this other side as well. So now when I come back to get this princess panel for the lower body, remember that it's going from the center front all the way out to the side of her body here at the full hip. We want the halfway point. So it's a different marking than what's on the center of her leg. And then the curve of this is following similar to the curve of her hip. So now I can see that that's what I want, and I'm going to go ahead and darken this in. So we'll use our size 3 for doing guidelines. And then I'll come back with my size 1 to get the binding on the bottom of her underwear. And I can also do this little zigzag flat lock stitch. And of course that's just for decoration. Normally croquis, you don't even have any clothes on them at all. I just like to have some undergarments on it, so then as I'm designing, it gives me a really good sense of where should I draw the top of her jeans, and if I'm drawing a mini skirt, I can see about how short that's going to be on her. Taking one last look here at my standing pose, I'm making sure that everything is in its place and I have all my guidelines. One thing that I'm noticing is I forgot to put in the seams here for her sleeves. So for instance, looking here at the advanced static pose, and we have the seams right here. This is for your sleeves, and you need to have that in your inked croquis. So I'm going to go ahead and put these back together so I can find those locations. So now I have my inked croquis taped back on top of the original, and you can see here the seams from the sleeves which are missing on the croquis, and we have to have those. And basically what we're doing is we're connecting from the shoulder going back towards the rib cage, and we want to stop just before we get to the armpit. So watch me first, and I'll do that here. And use your size 3 marker. So what I'm doing is I'm stopping just before her armpit skin, but it still lets us know where that seam would be. And let's get that over here on this other side. So there, now you can see the seams for her shirt and her sleeves. So go ahead and just take one final last check on your croquis, making sure you have all the horizontal guidelines, princess panels, center fronts, and that you've inked out all of the details and features on her body. So that's the basics for inking your croquis. And also I'll do a faster version for inking your advanced static pose, so you can watch for that video as well. Now that you have this pose complete, go ahead and scan the inked page for me for credit for this assignment. And also with all of your marker pens, make sure that you close them nice and tight so none of the air will get inside of there. And as you store these, be sure to store them horizontally. Don't keep them inside of a jar or something where all of the tips will start to dry out.